What? No, that's fine. I happy to have the meeting. I didn't know if, I was just asking if we had, because if we had said to her, like, we're having the food, we need to have the food.
Good morning.
Hi, Dorothy, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, I'm fine. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Is Galen, not yet, but let's see here. I'm gonna get, uh-oh, our owl. I'm not sure if it's, is it all plugged in?
It's not, there's no light.
I know, the lights are till. Howard will know how to. Howard?
Yes.
The owls aren't, on.
Each other. They talk
They're
to
not
each other.
talking.
When I set them up, we talk to each other.
Oh, really?
Okay, so make sure that. Unplug one, plug it in. There's an on off switch, right? Yeah, but if that didn't get hit.
This is the all, but let's.
Okay, so maybe it's a.
Well, let's see. Yeah, it's not coming up as a, as an option on my. Oh, yeah, here, I'm gonna just try to replug this back in. This is the,
That's too bad.
Are you talking about captioning? Because the captioning option isn't.
no, I'll get that in a second. I'm talking about
Oh,
the,
okay. Okay.
Something went on.
that wasn't, oh, that, something, okay, it's red over there.
It's not supposed to be red.
No, it's not supposed to be red.
Over study, I'm gonna unplug this momentarily. Okay, well, I just unplugged this, but let me good old unplug and plug it in. Okay, that is now plugged back in.
Good morning, Susan.
Good morning, Rabbi.
How are you?
Well, thank you. Just came from a beautiful run. It's beautiful out.
It is, I know. Yeah, it's not showing up on the audio and video. Yeah, I'm gonna,
This one?
Just to the, no, just to the right of the red light. There's a,
Oh, power.
It's not.
Did it go on? It's green now,
yeah.
but I don't see anything.
yeah, it's not, the owl is, the computer isn't reading the owl. I'm just gonna try plugging it in. Let's just see here.
I think maybe I'll do it.
No.
Just turn it in.
Oh, wait, here come the owls. Here's the light. I see the eyes. No, it's good. It's good, but the owl still isn't coming up as an on the computer. Computer's not reading it. Yeah.
This, is this one plugged in? Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I unplugged and replugged each of the plugs.
Should I close it?
Well, I don't think so. Let's see. I wonder if this thing is not being read. It's hold on. I'm gonna try some. There we go.
Oh, there you go. You did it.
I don't think this is working. This hub. Is this the owl here?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's.
Oh, you did some,
Yeah.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah.
there it is. Okay. Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, how are you, Susie?
Okay, fine.
Didn't work.
I'll bring it up to him, see if he has another one. This is just an
He's not gonna have
adapter.
another one. He just bought that. But we have to spend some time working on that because it didn't work.
Okay, let me bring it up to him.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Okay, so this now I think we should be good. Owl.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's good. And look, it's 9:14. So we got.
Okay, so captioning is working, but transcription isn't.
I don't know the
It says
difference.
on mine that it has been enabled.
Yes, mine too.
No, I enabled it, but it's
Oh.
not showing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's showing on mine.
Showing here.
I don't know, Anita, how to do the setting on your screen. It's showing on my screen.
The transcription is showing on your screen as
Yeah.
opposed to captioning?
Oh, I don't know the difference between the captioning and the transcription.
Oh, well, captioning just shows at the bottom, runs across the bottom, but transcription, you can see everything the whole transcript of
Oh.
what's
I
been
don't know
said.
how to do that. Let's see here.
Oh, I've never had to transit.
I'm not sure how to turn that on. I just turn on.
That helps us with hearing problems because if we can't catch something, then we can go back and read it.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know, Anita, how to turn that on. I mean, I hit closed captioning and
Okay.
the transcript from this meeting may be saved and shared. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how to turn that on or where that would be. Yeah. All right. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Arlene. Good morning. All right. So, good to see you guys. We are going to, we did not meet last week. So, as I was away, glad to be back now. Let's start with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. All right, so we're going to go back to that text that we're studying about kind of philosophy of prayer. We've had so many good conversations. We haven't been able to work through the text yet, and I'm hoping that we will be able to do that today. So let's get there. I will put it on the screen. You remember that we were. Let's see, let me pull it up and see where we were. Okay, so so we talked about the concept of prayer as avodah. Avodah shebalev, the service of the heart. Okay, and remember how that we talked about how what that means for prayer. That prayer is not only an act of reciting liturgy, but it's also, and more importantly, an act of sacrifice, of offering the self to God, in the same way that in the Torah, in the ancient world, our ancestors worship God by offering things, animals and grains and so forth to God, the best of what they had. Prayer is the same substantive act, offering the self to God, in service of the heart. All right, so I want to look here to build on that idea. I want to look at some texts. This first one, number 3 here, from Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik on prayer, and then after him we'll look at something from Abraham Joshua Heschel on prayer. I find these texts to be very powerful, and I want to use them to help us frame our study of the liturgy. All right, so Soloveitchik says,
The halacha, which is Jewish law, distinguishes between two kinds of mitzvot, the actional and the experiential. The actional mitzvot require an action that does not point to a corresponding experience, mental attitude, or inner activity. So we're going to pause here and make sure we understand what he means by actional mitzvot. If the mitzvot can be divided, broadly speaking, into two types, actional and experiential. An actional mitzvah is something that is fulfilled in the outward action itself. So examples of this would be shaking the lulav at Sukkot.
Lighting Shabbat candles.
Lighting a Shabbat candle, right? Something that the mitzvah is the deed itself. So you pick up the lulav and you shake it. That's the essence of the mitzvah. Or lighting a Shabbat candle, to kindle the lights is the mitzvah. Or to eat matzah at Passover, to taste a matzah. Okay? So when you do the action, you have fulfilled the mitzvah. Now he goes on. Hi, Vicky and Courtney, good to see you guys. Okay. By contrast, experiential commandments express themselves through a parallel series of activity and experience, of inner movement and outer action. The contemplative experience develops a dynamic, uncontrollable force that breaks through the barrier of inwardness into the world of deeds and movement. Okay, so this is a different type of mitzvah. And prayer for Soloveitchik is experiential, not actional. Okay, so experiential is something that has an outward, an action associated with it. In the case of prayer, saying the words of the liturgy. But the mitzvah itself is not fulfilled in the action. The mitzvah itself is fulfilled in the experience, which is inner. Okay, so there's two dimensions, inner and inward and outward. And this is what we were talking about a little bit before, as we were kind of building out the idea that saying the words of prayer in and of itself is not prayer. Okay, that prayer is something that happens inside you. The experience of, the emotional and spiritual experience happening inside you. The saying of the words is a related action because what's happening inside you needs somewhere to go. Okay, so think of the words of the liturgy as kind of constructing a vessel. And the act of prayer is the experience of something kind of happening in you, your spiritual energy building up inside you. And as he says here, the contemplative experience, the reflectiveness, the inner contemplation of prayer develops a dynamic, uncontrollable force that breaks through the barrier of inwardness. In other words, when you're praying, if you're really praying, whatever it is that's happening inside you is too much to be held in. It needs somewhere to go. It breaks through the barrier of inwardness and it goes out into the world. You have to pour it out somewhere. We pour it out into the words. The words in that way are the vessel. Okay, that's how he's kind of distinguishing between the actional, just waving the lulav, versus experiencing something inside and pouring it into an action. All right, so it's a little bit complex, but I want to take a moment here to talk about that and get a sense of how you're understanding this. What do you think? Yeah, Matt.
My question then is the words themselves in the prayer.
Yeah.
You're saying they're more. He's saying they're more of a conduit. Then the words themselves have less power than the thought behind them.
Yes and no. I think I think on level 1, that's true. Level 1 prayer 1.0 is how I like to talk about it. Or level 1 of prayer is about the inward motion, the inward aspect, what's going on inside you. And in that respect, and you're pouring it into the words. In that respect, yes, the words themselves are of secondary importance. It could also be, they could be gibberish. For lots of us, they are. If we don't know Hebrew, it's effectively gibberish, right? So think about, we had talked about before the nigun. Nigun is a melody that we sing that has no words, but like ya la la, right? So you sing it, ya la 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 la. That, you know, it doesn't matter what those words mean. They happen to not mean anything, but it could be any other sound, or it could be Hebrew and you don't know Hebrew, because on level 1 of prayer, the words that you're saying don't matter. It's about unlocking the spiritual essence of the self and letting it build so that it becomes so powerful that it needs somewhere to go and you pour it into the words. So have you ever had an experience of singing a nigun that was so kind of just intense that you felt like it lifted you, or it helped you tap into something in yourself? You know, or you just kind of felt connected to God through the singing of a nigun. Can you raise your hand if you felt that? Okay, so some of us have felt that. Nigunim are very powerful. You know, they come out of the Hasidic tradition, you know, which is really the focus of Hasidism is really on the emotional, as a spiritual experience. And a nigun can really be a very powerful way to unlock the emotional dimension of ourselves. You're not worried about what you're saying, you're not thinking, you're just being. Feeling, exactly. Okay, so I'm sorry, Dorothy and then Lee. Dorothy, you had your hand up.
Yes, I did. I must admit, I'm having a little difficulty wrapping my head around this description. I was thinking in terms of active and passive, that when we perform a mitzvah, like shaking the lulav, lighting the candles, we are actively creating a physical way of expressing prayer and with God, you know, a connection with God. When we are passive, and I was thinking here of hearing the shofar, where we are not doing anything actively, we're receiving something that well, the way you said hearing a nigun, the nigun has not done it for me, but the shofar gives me chills.
Okay.
Literally. I mean, I literally feel like some part of me was around 2,000 years ago and heard that before, you know, whatever it was, 4,000 years ago. And so that passive thing, that receiving, for me has a holy connotation that is like a prayer of the heart. Am I on the right track here, or is it totally different?
I think it's different. I think what he's talking about is different, because I mean, you're right that the shofar, the act of hearing, that's a passive action, which is the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to hear the shofar. Soloveitchik, though, isn't talking about active versus passive. He's talking about where the fulfillment of the mitzvah happens. So when you shake the lulav, the actual mitzvah, the command, is to pick up the lulav and shake it. That's how we fulfill if you do that, you've done the mitzvah. It doesn't matter what you feel inside. It doesn't matter what you're thinking about. The mitzvah itself is the physical action. Contrast that with prayer, where the mitzvah of prayer is what he's saying is not in saying the words. The mitzvah is not fulfilled in saying the words. The mitzvah is fulfilled in the inner experience. That's the distinction. Okay? So the words are incidental. Now he doesn't stop there. And he goes on, so like as Matt's question about does it mean the words are of secondary importance? In the whole scheme of things, no, they're of equal importance.
Because otherwise, why would we have prayers?
Yeah.
If they're not.
Exactly. When you take it to level 2, okay, the words of the prayer are very important and essential. The halakha requires these words, okay? But as we'll see, it's about the interplay of the words and the self. That ultimately we still can only fulfill the mitzvah of prayer through the experience, the inward experience. Just saying the words is not prayer. That's the main thing that I want us to understand. If we just open the book, as I'm guessing many of us do, is like you come to services and we sit there and we say the words. And maybe nothing is going on inside you. We're not even on that level. We're just focused on saying the words. What Soloveitchik is telling us is that we're not praying when we do that. Okay, because prayer is something that happens inside you, not only outwardly. Okay, so Lee, you had your hand up. Yes.
So when you were asking about the nigun, I'm thinking of that in coordination with community, of needing a minyan. So way back in my youth, when I used to go to USY or LTF, and we do Havdalah, and you finish the specific prayers, but you start swaying and you know the songs, you know, the niguns that are at the end of that, and you have all these people, and you've said this, Howard, when you're with multiple people, but in this case, not necessarily doing a prayer, but you know, the voices just keep adding. And you know, you feel that you're part of something.
Yeah, very nice. And all of that, what creates the experience, perhaps is the sound, the voices in unison, the environment. All of those things help to stir something in you. That's where prayer happens. That's the point. So the words that we say in prayer, when you get to level 2 of prayer, and you understand the significance of the words and what they mean and the allusions that they're making, and the you know, that's part of what can help to create to draw out the experience of the self. But ultimately, it's the experience in the self where we're actually praying, not in the speaking of the words. Okay, so Howard, you're
I'm wondering if there's a relationship between what we're discussing now and the opening words of the V'ahavta. My recollection from my youth, the translation that I kind of remember is, "You shall love Adonai, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind."
Yeah.
Right? And so those are 3 different things. And then there's also the love part, right? The key part. I mean, we kind of know how we display love to our fellow human beings. There's the love of our friends, the love with our life partners. Loving God is different. I mean, it's not the way that we love our fellow people. So is that somehow connected to what we're discussing? The do we demonstrate the love by shaking the lulav? Do we also demonstrate the love by engaging in these inward, outward
Yeah,
things?
definitely. We demonstrate love for God by doing mitzvot, right? So and that's what Ve'ahavta says at the at the end of it is Lema'an tizkaru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai, so that you'll remember and do all my commandments. The doing of the commandments is the gesture of love. That's how we show our love to God. And different commandments are different. So shaking the lulav is fulfilling a commandment, and praying is also fulfilling a commandment. It's just what Soloveitchik is telling us is that we fulfill those commandments differently. The shaking of the lulav is fulfilled by an outward action. Praying is fulfilled by an inward action, an inward experience. Okay, so to illustrate, let's take an example, okay, of what he's saying of the... Okay, Nina, yeah.
Just very quickly.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little of yoga and breathing as opposed to poses. And the hard part for me in doing yoga is the breathing and understanding how important that is in the connection with whatever the pose is supposed to bring to you.
Right.
And I think so, maybe people who are into yoga can see that the nagun part of it is like the breathing. It helps you to kind of search in yourself and create the platform by which the mitzvot then become that more powerful.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's good. That's very good. So so whether it so in yoga the outward is the pose, and the breathing, the physical actions. But if you practice yoga, I think the goal of yoga is also in doing those poses, it creates it helps you feel something inside yourself.
Yeah.
It's body. There's a kind of a dialogue happening between body and soul.
And the breath, the whole idea of the breath as being kind of representative kind of the soul.
Yeah.
So if you can really inwardly focus on that, then you're kind of it's almost like a religious, experience.
Yeah, right, very nice.
Whatever religion, wherever it takes you.
Right, I just also want to make a distinction there between the act of breathing, which is a physical action, and the corresponding inner experience, which is not physical,
Right.
it's spiritual. Okay, and that's what he's pointing to, is the inner experience is spiritual. So just one second, Vicki, I want to give an illustration and we'll take some more thoughts. Okay, so I think that after reading the Soloveitchik, this was very kind of transformative for me in reading this essay, because in the way he frames it, I relate to it. So I developed a metaphor for myself to illustrate it, and that is, I think of our spiritual essence as water. Okay, so I imagine like there's a spring inside myself of spiritual energy, which is water, and the act of prayer is about like kind of letting that spring like build up, start to bubble up and build an intensity, and there's like a dam, inside the self that kind of keeps the water at bay. Well, as it builds an intensity, it becomes stronger and stronger, and there comes a point where it can't be kept in anymore. The dam isn't strong enough to hold it in, and the water is pounding against the dam, and it has to be. You have to open the dam. It needs somewhere to go. The water is too strong, right? And when you open the dam and the water rushes forth, it pours out into the world. That's what the act of singing or saying the words of liturgy is. It's letting that water go somewhere. Okay? So think about like when you're, if you have a moment of intense joy, something, goes great in your life, and, you feel such joy and you just go, yes! Right? You know that feeling. It's like you're so happy that you just have to like scream out in joy. You have to say yes or ah! Right? That's what he's describing. That's prayer. Okay? And it doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. The prayer is the experience where you feel like it's too strong, it has to come out of my mouth because I can't keep it in. That's prayer. That's what he's going for on level 1, okay? So it could be nigun, it could be words of liturgy, it could be a shriek, it could be a cry, just like when you experience intense pain or sadness and you're just like, ah! Okay? That's prayer. The inner experience becoming so strong that it has to go somewhere. Okay? So if you think about prayer in that respect, that when you come to the synagogue or wherever you're praying, that's what you're going for. You're going for tapping into yourself so deeply, into your own emotion and being so deeply that you just have to, like, it has to go somewhere. Does that help? So, okay, so Vicky and then Shelley online. Go ahead, Vicky.
Is this, it was not the original thing, and I'll get back to that, but when you say this is prayer, do you mean the actual expression? Whatever the expression is, whether it's a shout, a conversation, because sometimes they say a conversation is like a prayer.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure that I would go that far. I think it's it's not the expression that's prayer. It's the feeling.
Well, I mean the feeling, but yes, the feeling, and then like you said, and then you express it.
Yes.
So whatever form the expression takes, would you define that as prayer?
Yeah, if it's an outpouring to God.
If it's coming from within.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah,
then,
that's the essence of prayer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then thank you for clarifying that. And then I think that I'm sort of struggling, as Dorothy said she was. I'm sort of struggling with the process. There has to be a process. I don't think as lay people, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I think it's very difficult to walk into a synagogue or wherever and suddenly, you're saying hello to everyone and it's Shabbat and it's joyous, and then suddenly, it's sort of, in theater we say you have to get into character.
Yeah.
You can't go on stage talking to your friends and,
Right.
like that, the drama, you can't do that, it doesn't work.
Exactly.
And I think that, so, is there a way, even at morning minion, usually I'm making my coffee, I sit down, the dog, he wants to play with me, the whole thing, but there has to be some sort of meditative process, it seems to me.
Yes.
You have to get into it in whatever way works for you.
Exactly.
Whether
You do
it's
have to get into it.
breathing, as you brought out the breathing. I think that was your
Well,
analogy.
it's also the reflections.
Yes, exactly.
At the beginning of the
Yeah.
minion, that kind of helps to get you out of
Oneself.
right, and or bring you into oneself.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Right, yeah.
and that's why it's so important that people sign up for those.
Thank you. Yeah, good, Nina.
But I
Thank
think
you.
that, the reflection.
Yes, so you're right, Vicky. I mean, look, this isn't something that you can just turn on.
Right.
It is a state of being, and it's an art and it's a discipline to learn how to cultivate that in yourself. So the questions to ask, and I'm glad you are starting to think about it. Questions to ask is, what helps me get into that place. You know, what do I need? In that respect, now you're seeing Soloveitchik, okay? How words can help you get into that place. Melodies may help you get there. Quiet may help you get there. All of those things on this level are tools to help you get into that place. Because that's the goal, okay? The rest of it are tools to help you get into that place. So a lot of times, like, we'll start a prayer service with a nigun, or a reflection of words, or some quiet, or some instrumental music. I don't know, maybe, and this is very legitimate, maybe we don't do a good job with this with the structure of our prayer service of helping people get into that place. And if that's the case, we need to change it. Okay, so we're going to take Shelley's waiting, and then Courtney. Go ahead, Shelley.
So my question is one of clarification. So my understanding is that the ancient rabbis said that you should meditate for an hour or something like that before prayer. And of course, meditation is really big right now. And so from what we've just been discussing, it seems like the difference, which I've always had a problem with, what is the difference between meditation and prayer? It sounds like prayer erupts into words or a cry or something like that, whereas meditation, which is also, of course, inward, stays there and does not come out. Is that a correct interpretation? My own feeling is I like that schmoozing before Minyan to find out what everybody's and stuff like that. Meditation, but is that correct? Is that what you think?
That's exactly how I think of it. I think of meditation is an inward focus and stays there. Prayer begins inwardly and erupts. That's a great word, Shelley. It erupts and it pours forth. Prayer is a dialogical experience with God. Meditation stays within the self. So thank you, Shelley, for that distinction. Courtney, go ahead.
Okay, may I ask, I'm not sure if this will make sense, but if the vocal expression is manifestation of our feelings, at whatever form, whether it's good or it's bad, we can't help. It's almost like an innate thing that happens. Now, when it comes to God, it's not a manifestation of our souls that we're trying to seek, that manifestation of, like in the world of spirituality. I don't know if that.
Are you saying, is God a manifestation of our souls?
No, like that through prayer and being more observant.
Yeah.
We're seeking that manifestation of feeling God's presence.
Yeah, I think that's a nice description. And I think, so what I'm hearing in that, Courtney, is like, it's almost like if you're the essence of yourself. Yeah. The essence of self is abstract. You can't see it or touch it. It has no form. Right? It's just essence. The act of prayer is about pouring remember, it's avodah shebalev, the service or sacrifice of the heart. So it's about pouring the essence of the self out toward God. How does abstract essence get poured out? It gets poured out by taking some kind of form. The form in this case is speech. So if you can think of the words or nigun or whatever it is, shrieking, that gives the abstract essence the form of sound or the form of word. That's how it goes out into the world. And so I think the speaking of liturgy or the singing of words or chanting a nigun or whatever, when we're really praying like Soloveitchik is describing it, is actually putting the essence of the self into form so it can go out into the world toward God. Okay? So we're going to see, and I appreciate your comment, Courtney. It helps me understand something that Heschel says that we're going to get to in a minute. Linda, yeah.
I have basic difficulty of when you refer to God. I feel a very strong spirituality, but I'm not sure of my relationship with God, whether, for me, there is God, but there's strong spirituality.
Okay, yeah. So look, the question of what God is, what's the object, you know, that we're pouring ourselves out to. For purposes of this conversation, that's of secondary importance, because each of us may think of God differently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and which is totally fine. And you can pour yourself out to whatever it is that you might imagine God to be. Think of yourself. The goal here is to pour yourself outward.
To experience.
To take as we're going to see with Heschel, it says like kind of, it's almost translating the self, the essence of the self, into something that can go out. That can go out toward the other with a capital O.
Okay,
Whatever, however you define that.
Okay, that makes it easier for me.
So let's keep going in Soloveitchik. The outer action required by the halakha, that's saying the words of liturgy, which is required. The halakha says you gotta have to say these words, is dramatic in nature. One does not just act, he acts something out. The dominant theme of the performance is a great, exciting story. It tells a tale of the human mind and heart, of something wondrous or tragic that occurred in the deep recesses of the eye. It is filled with eagerness on the part of the doer to unburden himself of an emotional load, pressing on his frail personality. The action is vehement and fervent, and in its rush and earnestness, we see the consuming passion, a soul frightened and exalted, believing and rebelling, making a heroic effort to express the inexpressible. This passage, I think, is like very poetic and very vivid and powerful.
He's a very deep thinker, this man.
Very deep, very deep. I love this passage.
Say a heroic
Effort to.
A heroic effort to express the inexpressible. All right, so what are your reactions to his description?
Because he's trying to.
Vicky, go ahead.
Trying to express what is our very soul.
Yeah.
And the soul is not, it's in the metaphysical, range. It's not something we can touch or feel. It's not like a heart.
Yeah.
So it's our innermost, I think our innermost feelings that is sort of, it's beyond feelings. It's sometimes like if you've ever felt God's presence, or all of a sudden, this joy I felt, like this joy would come over me because I felt so almost in sync with God. I felt like, and that is inexpressible. And how do you express it?
Yeah.
It's just this connection, and it lasts for seconds, milliseconds, but it's so powerful.
Yeah, nice.
And that's how I think of it.
Very nice. Beautiful. Yeah,
I'm
Elaine.
going off on Vicky's. Those of you that may have heard my chapel meditation when I was in high school and in Israel with my parents in the middle of the desert, realizing even though I didn't have the education, didn't belong to a temple, I knew I was Jewish. And it was just a gut feeling, just like an aura type thing that came, was there for a moment, and then left.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a feeling, and still to this day, still trying to figure it out, but...
Good. So we can think of prayer. Prayer is a discipline. It's supposed to happen 3 times a day. And prayer is a deliberate effort to tap into that. Kind of harness it and give it as a gift back to God. And it's hard. I mean, so what he's describing here is not, it doesn't just happen. I mean, I used the analogy, I think, before of you know, working out at the gym. You know, if you just go to the gym like a couple times a year or every now and then, I mean, you cannot reasonably expect to have a good, you know, workout. I mean, it's going to be painful. It's going to, you know, it's going to be awful. And, you know, what are you going to get? I mean, it's very hard to have, you know, a meaningful kind of physical exercise experience if you don't do it as a discipline. The same thing is true of prayer, as he's describing it. I mean, you're not gonna have this kind of experience every time, but you'll never have it if you don't cultivate prayer as a discipline. Okay, Arlene.
Yeah, there's a passage on, if you have a Siddur, on page 187.
Okay, page 187 in the Siddur.
Yeah, that, you know, the bottom, the sort of footnote thing. God
Yeah.
can hardly be listening to the actual words of our prayers. How unendingly boring to hear such repetition days without number. And anyone who prays with any regularity or sincerity knows that the same prayers mean different things on different readings. Instead, each prayer is a metaphoric representation of the speaker's heart and mind. Now to God, that is an interesting and unending text, ever-changing, and God, the ultimate reader of nuance and illusion.
Nice.
So every time I see that, I really like that, because, again, it speaks to how one prays. You don't know the words, but, you know, like, and I think kiddingly, we all say, well, God will figure it out. You know, like, God knows, like, he's all smart and whatever it is, and, you know, he knows what we mean or whatever. But I think, you know, I always like that saying that, you know, that's so, or according to the writer of that.
Right, and in that respect, the words again are just tools. And there's a famous Hasidic story that illustrates this. You may be familiar with it. It's a story about a simple shepherd who doesn't know the Hebrew, the words of the liturgy, but so every day he wants to pray to God. So every day he just says Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. And some, you know, scholar comes along and kind of ridicules the shepherd. It's like, what are you doing? You don't know the words of prayer. You have to say the words, and that God kind of responds to him. It's like, this man, you know, don't ridicule this man. This man is praying to me. His heart, he's giving his heart to me. You know, he's putting the letters out there, and I, God, know how to put them together. Yeah, right? Because it's not, I mean, on that level of prayer, which is the foundational level, it doesn't matter what you're saying. What matters is what's happening inside you and what you're giving to God. Okay? Now notice how Soloveitchik uses, he uses the words of drama here. He says that the liturgy that is required by the halacha is it's like the script of a drama, an inner drama. And apropos of what Arlene was just saying, you can think about a script. I mean, a screenwriter could write a script to a movie. The performers who act out the script bring it to life, you know, and what makes like a movie that's performed by Tom Cruise and Julia Roberts and Robert De Niro different from, you know, a play that's performed by amateurs? Well, it's the way in which they bring it to life, you know, through method acting and bringing in the character and all the stuff that actors do that make their performances so good, that gives life to the script. So if the liturgy is the script of the inner drama of prayer, each of us brings it to life in our own way. And when we say the liturgy, we go through the service, we're acting out the drama of the self. And the words of the script are the you know,
Vehicle?
the vehicle. The vehicle, exactly. That's right. And so in that sense, when we start getting to the liturgy, we'll see that the liturgy has a dramatic structure to it. It's not just, I mean, I used to experience before I ever studied this, these things like, okay, the service is like 50 pages long, and it's just like, you're just going and going until you get to Aleinu, and then you know it's almost over. Right?
We're all
And
counting the pages.
yeah, counting the pages, it seems like there's nothing to it but just lots of pages. But actually, the liturgy does have a structure that is like the structure of a play or a movie. There are peaks and climax and, you know, and all those kinds of things that help us act out this inner drama. Nina.
I'm going to bring this back to the Daily Minion. And
The what? I'm sorry.
the Daily Minion.
The Daily Minion, yep.
Okay. And the fact that it is a Zoom experience. And because of the nature of Zoom, you can't have everybody saying the words together like you would in the sanctuary.
Right.
And so there is a leader, or a series of leaders.
Yeah.
And the script, when the leader is Rabbi Stoller, has a different impact than when on Wednesdays, which is the day off, our community takes pieces of it and reads it. And I find that when it's only you that's leading us, that I find I have to struggle to not allow you to pray for me. But when it's the voices of untrained people who make mistakes along the way when they're reading the Hebrew, it imposes on me a responsibility to truly find the essence of prayer, because I'm hearing these irregular voices, and they're all dear, they've all become dear friends in a very short period of time. And so, you know, it's kind of interesting to me to see that that's kind of what has happened in our deal.
That's beautiful.
Experience.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. I think that's a beautiful description, and that also is an articulation, you know, for by one person of kind of what enables her to get into that place of prayer. Again, there's no right or wrong. There's no, you know, right or wrong way to get into that place of prayer. It's going to be different for each of us, and that's fine. So the key is for us to know, you know, about ourselves, like what helps us get there, so that we can do it. That's why different people, maybe we don't necessarily know, have the vocabulary to articulate it at this point, but like why people will say, some people like one style of prayer service, somebody else likes a different style of prayer service. You know, and we have, you know, we talk about like, I like this melody, or I like that one, or I like when there's, you know, traditional chazanut, you know, the cantor chanting those kind of ancient melodies, and other people say like, I like when we can sing along. I understand that like there's no right or wrong. These preferences are, I think, even if we don't know how to articulate it, they're giving expression to like what helps me get into that place of prayer. And that's the goal of a prayer service, and that's the goal of a shaliach tzibur, the prayer leader. Not to perform for the congregation, but to help the congregants get into the place of prayer. That's the job. Okay? So one other thing about Soloveitchik I want to show you is, notice here in this last part that we read, where he talks about the eagerness and the movement. He says the action is vehement and fervent, like there's a movement there that he's describing, intense movement. And then he goes on and he says, a soul frightened and exalted, believing and rebelling, right? Those are like poles, opposites. And he's describing movement. That, right, think about that, and you have maybe seen some people in prayer will move, and there's like a back and a forth. That's exactly what Soloveitchik is describing. Drawing close, pulling away, drawing in, pulling away, frightened, exalted. That the experience of prayer is one of give and take, push and pull, close and far, right? Because God is so complex. I mean, like we've talked about before, how someone around this table has asked the question before about like, who am I to come close to infinity? How do you even do that? Who am I as a person to speak to God? And yet I'm invited to do that, right? So prayer is like this paradoxical experience. And the movement of the body, just like the speaking or singing of words, is an expression of that. So we in the Reform aesthetic of prayer, because our prayer services were really very early on modeled on the Protestant church, which is very formal and rigid. Like, we learned this way of being, like, sit there and don't move. You should hear a pin drop, Don't move, because, like, that's weird. Don't be expressive, because we're, like, very prim and proper. But when we do that, we're closing off, like, these avenues to connection. Because just like the sound of melodies or the cadence of words or the energy of people around us can help us connect to that zone, so can bodily movement, like yoga. Jewish prayer has that dimension to it. Don't be afraid to let yourself move. Courtney.
Like you just touched upon, there's like this melodic force, and also the image of the rocking back and forth, even when one davens. It's almost like, I hate to use this analogy, like a rock and roll singer. He's up there, as you say, a visceral experience, like when you dance.
Right.
And I think also movement is symbolic of like the waves of life, the current, as the ebb and flow. And I think that can also speak to you, whether it's through an instrument or the instrument of self.
Yes, beautiful, Courtney. And one of the Psalm 150, which we sing in our daily prayers, the Hallelujah Psalm, at the end it says, Kol haneshama tehallel. It means let every soul praise God, and it comes at the end of the sequence, praise God with the harp, praise God with the lyre, all these different musical instruments. And so because then the soul comes at the end, traditions of reading that psalm like describe the soul as a musical instrument. Praise God with the soul, just like we would praise God with a guitar or a piano or an organ or whatever. And that involves like that. It's like you're singing, you're moving. I mean, if you can allow yourself to kind of be guided by what Soloveitchik is teaching here and just like unlock like every aspect of your being and put it into the prayer, can be a really powerful experience.
Like the Baptists, particularly black churches, how they get so into it, you can see they're really carried away.
Yeah. Yeah.
The movement and the singing and
right.
the swaying and all the emotion, and you feel their faith.
That's right. And the only way to get to what Soloveitchik is describing as in prayer is you have to be uninhibited. You have to be uninhibited. Like you can't act out this drama. You can't feel it or unlock the wellspring if you're worried about how you look or what other people are thinking about you, or about, whether it's okay to move or make sounds. You can't get there. You have to be uninhibited. So then you have to ask yourself a question, it's like, how do we create an environment where we can be uninhibited? Okay, so let's we have a few minutes left. Let's move on. I want to look at this next statement by Abraham Joshua Heschel, or it's a collection of statements from him, to build on what we learned from Soloveitchik. He says, in acts of genuine expression, what goes on between the soul of man and the word of prayer is more than an active employment of using words as if they were tools. So we just kind of said that words were tools. Now Heschel is taking us to the next level. It's actually more than just using the words as tools. Here, the soul and the word react upon each other. The word is a creative force. All right? That's prayer 2.0. That's once you've started to learn how to focus that the locus of prayer, where prayer happens, is in the self and not in the speaking of words. Then you can start to integrate the words in and say like, oh, but these aren't gibberish. These are actually words that are poetic constructions that make reference and allusion to, ideas and stories in the Torah, and is beautiful language that has cadence and rhythm and means something very powerful, and I build a relationship with those words. Then those words, like Arlene read from the book there, is the words become a catalyst too. It's like the soul and the words, he says, are reacting upon each other. There's like a chemical reaction that's explosive. And that way the words like stimulate prayer. Okay, and create prayer. They're a creative force. Ultimately, the goal of prayer is not to translate a word, but to translate the self. And this is what I thought of when Courtney, you were sharing your idea, because you helped me hear that phrase in another way. Translate the self into something that you can give to God, something that has form. Not to render an ancient vocabulary into modern terminology, but to transform our thoughts into thoughts of prayer. The statement that since the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, prayer has taken the place of sacrifice, does not imply that sacrifice was abolished when the sacrificial cult went out of existence. Prayer is not a substitute for sacrifice. Prayer is sacrifice. What has changed is the substance of the sacrifice. The self took the place of the thing. The spirit is the same. And that's really important. We read in Leviticus about, bringing a goat and slaughtering the goat on the altar as a way, our way of worshiping God. And that was an agricultural society taking like the best of what they had, like their livestock and livelihood, and giving it to God. Because they want this, what's the spirit of what they're doing? They want to give the best of what they have to God. And that was the form that it took in the ancient world. Heschel's saying that we still do that. We will tend to say, like, we don't sacrifice anymore. That was in the old times. And now we do prayer instead. Heschel is saying yes and no. What's different is the form. But we still sacrifice 3 times a day. We sacrifice the self, not the goat. Arlene.
Rabbi, in the temple times where they were sacrificing, were there not prayers? Was there not, or was the sacrifice in the temple, but was there not any?
Did the Kohen say anything?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think so of any significance.
Okay, so all the prayer came after the destruction of the temples.
Yeah, it started to kind of take shape before as a rabbinic practice, but then yes, when the temple was destroyed and everything, prayer became the new way.
The substitute.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why our prayer services are tied to the services that took place in the temple.
Right.
Because it's the same thing. It's just reconstructed in different form. Okay, so he finishes up. In moments of prayer, we try to surrender our vanities, to burn our insolence, to abandon bias, cant, envy. We lay all our forces before him. The word is but an altar. We do not sacrifice. We are the sacrifice. Very powerful stuff again, Mike. So now that we've read Soloveitchik, Heschel, I hope that maybe you've never encountered descriptions of prayer like this before, but now that you've heard it, I mean, can you imagine like what it would be like if you could come into the chapel going for this kind of experience? Like how can this change the way you think about prayer? Thoughts?
I'm just thinking like, is there something about the how we pray or the service that could help us collectively get closer to that?
Yes, definitely. So now that we've
I don't
done
have an answer to that,
yeah,
but it would
now,
just seem that maybe there's something inherent in the structure of the service that
Definitely.
could help everybody get more spiritually.
Definitely. So now that we've finished kind of this like philosophical framework that I want to share with you, now we're going to get to the prayer service and we'll start next time with looking at the structure of the service, you know, its dramatic structure, because there is a dramatic structure, like I was saying before, and the first thing is to understand that. I think that's the first key to helping us get into that place. When we come in and open the book, what is the script that we're acting out? Like, where does it build and crescendo and, you know, whatever the dramatic terms. I'm not a drama person. Maybe we have people around here, but you know, there's Act 1 and Act 2 and Act 3, and it's got, you know, peaks and valleys and so forth. That's the first thing that we need to understand to help us with the experience. And then we'll start looking at Act 1 and the content of the script.
Are these being taped that we could relook at them, do you know?
They are, yeah.
Okay.
They are.
Because I'm not going to be here next week.
Okay.
And we can get copies then of your DAF?
Oh, yeah, I can give that to you.
That would be wonderful if you could send us that.
If you want, yeah, just send me an email if you'd like a copy of it, and I'll email it to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm thinking of Shakespeare.
It's just been on the screen, but I'm happy to send you a copy of it. You want to? Yeah, Karen?
I'm thinking of Shakespeare. All the world's a stage and we are but players on it, strutting our short passages. But Soloveitchik writes so beautifully, and I think there's no way to raise your hand on this that I could find, so.
Oh, there is. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, there's a little button that says reactions. And if you click on that, there's an option to raise your hand. That's how you.
Show captions. No, I'm not seeing that on mine, but that's.
Maybe somebody can help you offline.
Later, but I just wanted to say
Yeah.
it kind of reiterates the longing we were talking about in this morning's minion of Abraham, the searching, and that, you know, the longing for union and transcendence. And if we're Betzelim Elohim, it's not sacrificing the self so much as the union with the higher self.
Yeah.
You're not losing anything. You're not losing your soul. You are gaining the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. Nicely put, Karen. All right. So thank you all, and I appreciate the references to our daily minion. So now that you're learning about prayer, if you're not accustomed to coming to the daily minion, hope you'll come. We meet at 8 o'clock Monday through Friday, and it's a great prayer laboratory to work on developing the prayerfulness in yourself. All right, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.